Alright, in this section here we're going to be solving quadratic equations by completing the square. And of course we're going to get started. X squared minus 6x minus 16 is equal to 0. Now, in a previous section we talked about completing the square. So hopefully you watched that to see the pattern on how to complete the square. That was to find the vertex of a parabola. But now we're going to actually find the solutions to this quadratic equation here. Okay? The solutions. What numbers can I plug in for x so that the whole side over here is going to be equal to 0? Alright, so this is what we do. First thing I always do is I take a half, it's always a half, multiply it by this number here, which is, you can consider the whole thing here, negative 6, but it doesn't matter, you can leave the negative off because we always square this piece. Alright, so half of negative 6 is negative 3, and of course you see the reason it doesn't matter if we put a negative in there. It's because when we square it, it's going to always be positive. So we have 9. Alright? Now, I rewrite x squared minus 6x. I leave a blank right here. I go ahead and write my minus 16. And what goes in the blank is the 9. Okay? And of course, it's always going to be a positive 9. But then I must put a negative 9 outside. Alright? Okay, now I'm going to I'm going to rewrite where am I at here? Start parentheses. X, now we take a half of this number here, so that'd be minus 3 squared, and then we take this piece right here, which is going to be negative 25, and we write that right there, and set equal to 0. Alright, so this piece here is equal to our original at the top. Okay. Now what we're going to do is take the 25 to the other side. We want to solve for x. So I take the 25 to the other side, just rewrite x minus 3 squared. Now to get rid of the square, I square root both sides. So I square root both sides. And of course I must write a plus or minus right here every time I do that. So this now becomes a 5. Square root of 25 is 5. And this just becomes x minus 3. Oop, don't forget the plus or minus 5. And now take this negative 3 to the other side of the equal sign. So you have plus or minus 5 plus 3. Okay? So we have two solutions here. We have x is equal to the plus 5. So that gives us an 8. And we have x is equal to the negative 5 plus 3. And that gives us a negative 2. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this 8 and this negative 2 and we're going to check our solutions. We're going to make sure we did everything right. Okay? So we're going to take our 8 and our negative 2 and we're going to plug it in to what we've got up here. So let's plug negative 2 in. So this is negative 2 squared minus 6 times negative 2 minus 16. Alright, so that's 4 plus 12 minus 16 Alright, so we can see that 4 plus 12 is 16, and 16 minus 16 is 0. So we know that negative 2 is a solution. And our other solution was 8. So we're going to plug that in. So 8 squared minus 6 times 8 minus 16 is equal to 0. So 8 squared is 64 minus 6 times 8 is 48. And 64 minus 48 is 16. Should be 16. 16 minus 16 is 0. Alright, so you want to make sure that you check your work every time. Okay, so let's get started with another one. So this time, I'm going to 9x squared plus 6x plus 1 is equal to 0. So we take a half, we multiply it by this number here, the middle term, which is 6, and then we square the whole thing. Okay, so that would be 3 squared. Alright, so half of 6 is 3, then we square it, and we get 9. 3 squared is 9. So I'm going to write 9x squared plus 6x, and then we have a blank here, and then plus 1. So we're plugging the 9 into the blank. Remember, we must put a negative 9 outside. Alright, now I'm going to rewrite. Oh, and I made a mistake. Darn. Okay. Well, I guess it's good that I make the mistake and show you. There's something that I left out of this when completing the square, and I wasn't paying attention. But we got to factor this 9 out. Okay? We got to factor out the 9. So I'm just going to have to start over on this. Sorry about that. It's okay though. 9x squared plus 6x plus 1 is equal to 0. So I'm factoring the 9 out. We have to get it in this form here. There must be a coefficient of 1 in front of the x. Plus, I'm just going to write it like this right now. Plus 1 over 9 equals to 0. Now let's go ahead and rewrite this again. Simplify it. So this simplifies down to 2 over 3. 3 goes into 6 2 times. 3 goes into 9 3 times. X plus 1 9. Alright. Good enough. Then we're going to take half of this middle term. So we write 2/3 here, and then we want to square it. So we end up with 1/3 after simplifying this down a little bit. Squared becomes 1/9. Okay, so now we can't forget this 9 out here, even though it doesn't really make much of a difference in the long run. Alright, x squared plus 2/3 x, we have a blank, rewriting the end term. So the blank, so what goes in here, 1/9 goes in here. It's always a plus here. So we have minus 1/9. Right, it's all set equal to 0. So we have 9, start a parentheses, we have x plus, then we take a half of 2/3, so a half times 2/3 is just going to end up being 1/3. Squared, 1/9 minus 1/9 is 0, so we don't have to write anything there. Alright. And then we're solving for this piece right here. Now you can multiply both sides by 1/9 to get this 9 to go away. Alright, so now what we're going to do is square root both sides to get rid of this square. Alright, so we would square root both sides. And of course the square root of 0 is just 0, so we just get to rewrite. No, we don't write 0 there. Yeah, we write 0 there. I'm losing my mind. Alright, square root of square, we said, it just drops out. Alright, and then all we have to do is solve for x in this problem. So x is equal to negative 1/3, moving the 1/3 over to the other side of the equal sign. Now let's go ahead and check our work. Make sure we did everything right. So I'm going to take negative 1/3 and plug it in right here. So we have 9 times negative 1/3 squared plus 6 times negative 1/3, or you might say a third. We want to do that. Alright, so this becomes negative 1/3 squared becomes 1/9 times 9. Right? Then minus, because we have a positive times a negative, minus 2. Then plus 1. So this 9 times 1/9 is 1, minus 2 plus 1. And guess what? 1 plus 1 is 2, and 2 minus 2 is 0, or however you want to do this. 1 minus 2 is negative 1, plus 1 is 0. So there you go. Our solution is negative 1/3. All right. So time to look at another one. Actually, I think this one here, what we're going to do is I'm going to write this one up, and you need to find the solution by completing the square. So this is going to be a quiz question. All right, this is a quiz question. So you try to work it out and see what you come up with. And then I'm just going to write the answer. So pause the video, try to work it out. All right. I guess I'm going to go ahead and work this out. Okay, so first thing I'm going to say is 1/2 times negative 2 squared. Remember that negative 2 comes from here. So that just becomes a 1 right there. 1. And so we have x squared minus 2x. And we have a blank minus 63. And of course, what we plug in the blank right here is this 1. But we must write a minus 1 right there. So then we say x, and then half of this negative 2, which would be negative 1, squared. Then minus, and this is going to be 64. Right? Negative 63 minus 1. And then we just take that 64 to the other side. And then, of course, we have to square root both sides, get rid of this square. Now, don't forget the plus or minus. So it'd be plus or minus 8. Right. And so we have x is equal to plus or minus 8 plus 1. So we have x is equal to 8 plus 1, which is going to be 9. And x is equal to negative 8 plus 1, which is going to be equal to negative 7. So your solutions are 9 and negative 7. So what you need to do is go back up here and plug 9 in, see what you get, and then plug negative 7 in, and you should get zeros. Okay. So hopefully you were able to work that one out and get those same answers I got. And of course, I make sure I plug those into an algebra system software just to make sure I get them right. Everything's always checked 2 or 3 times before I put it up on the web. Alright, well hopefully you got the hang of being able to complete the square and solve for x, finding the solution set. We're going to work one more and see what we come up with here. We have 16 x squared plus 8x plus 10 is equal to 0. So what I want to do here is I'm going to want to factor out this 16, okay? So we need to do that. Alright, so let's go ahead and simplify this down. So this becomes a half x plus, and then this piece right here is going to, what's that going to become? Let's see, 2 goes into 10 5 times, and 2 goes into 16 8 times. Alright, so we take a half, we multiply it by this number here, which is a half, and then of course we square it. So this is 1/4, and then squared becomes 1/16. Right. So we're going to have x squared plus a half, x plus, we've got a blank here, and then plus our 5/8. So what we put in the blank is this 1/16. But let's put a minus 1/16 outside. Alright, and we close our parentheses up. Alright, so I'm going to write x. We take a half of this guy now. So that makes that a 1/4. Square that. Then we have 5/8 minus 16. I'm going to do a little side work over here, just in case you might have forgotten how to add fractions. Put a 2 over 2. So now we have a common denominator, 10/16 minus 1/16, and that gives us 9/16. And of course, can we break 9/16 down any? And the answer to that is no. So we're going to have plus 9/16. And of course, we'll set that equal to 0. Now we multiply both sides by 1 over 16. That gets rid of this 1/16 right here. So we have x plus a 1/4 squared plus 9/16 is equal to 0. Now we take this 9/16 and move it to the other side. You get negative 9/16. And we have x plus a 1/4 squared. Now we square root both sides. So we square root. And of course this square here goes away. X plus a 1/4. And we got something fishy going on over here. Now there was a section on complex numbers, I believe I had, that you might want to look at, okay? If you don't know what's going on here, how to handle this negative. Well, I'm going to break this up actually and write negative 9 in the top, so maybe this could be better seen. Okay, well we can't take square roots of negative numbers and get a real number out. Alright, so there's been an extension to the real number system. It's known as the complex numbers, and that's what we're going to be using here, is the complex numbers as a solution. Alright, so the square root, this can be broken up as the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 9 over the square root of 16. And of course, we've still got this over on this side. The square root of negative 1 is I times 3. That's Alright, now we took the square root, and there's something that we've got to make sure that we don't forget, and that's to write plus or minus out in the front here. Okay, so we've got to make sure we don't forget plus or minus. So this is plus or minus right here. Alright. So I'm going to go ahead and take this 1/4 to the other side. Now there was a section on complex numbers, and to properly write a complex number, you would write the real part, and then you would write the imaginary part, and you would write it in this form right here. Okay, or that could be a minus. Right, there's a plus and a minus usually. So this is going to end up being negative 1/4 plus or minus 3/4 I. Okay, so you do the plus 3/4 I and then the minus 3/4 I. Alright, this is the real part, and then this would be the imaginary part. Now you can take this solution here that we got, even though this is not a real number, this is a complex number, and plug it in to our original up here. And this whole side right here should equal 0. Okay. If you forgot how to work with complex numbers, I have a section on complex numbers. But so this particular equation here doesn't have a real solution or real number. It's a complex number. All right, so I thought maybe I should probably work one of these out just to give you an idea if you happen to come across one that its solution is a complex number. Now, if it asks for real solutions only, well then you would say no solution. Okay, you would say that this doesn't have no real solution. But if it doesn't say that, then you probably need to state that it has a complex solution. Alright, complex solution. Well, I think that's going to end this section on solving the quadratic equations by completing the square. And in the next section, we're going to be doing it maybe a little bit more of a shortcut method, and that is you're going to need to know, you're going to need to memorize the quadratic formula. Okay, the quadratic formula, which we're going to derive by completing the square of a general quadratic equation. All right, good luck.